You've counted every calorie, tried every diet, spent hours in the gym, and still something's missing. You want more than just weight loss. You want your energy back. You want your confidence restored. You want a way of living that doesn't feel like punishment. Welcome to Master Your Metabolism, where we cut through the noise, ditch the fads, and give you a real plan to become the healthiest, strongest version of you. Hosted by our team of expert coaches with proven strategies, science-based tips, and real-life encouragement, not just to help you lose fat, but actually create that lifestyle that you love. You've tried everything. Now, let's try what actually works. This is your turning point. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome to our podcast. This is Brooke Masters. I'm here with Calvin, Amanda, and Coach Megan. We are here today to chat about reverse dieting. We have been getting a lot of clients that have a lot of questions around this concept. It really seems backwards when people are coming to us to lose weight to actually tell them they are going to have to increase calories. So we wanted to kind of explain what the concept is, when you would use it, who would it be appropriate for, as well as some things that are challenging for a lot of people when thinking about increasing their calories, because mindset is an issue when you have such a difficult time around food and the emotional attachment with food, and also understanding that concept of cutting calories doesn't always work. So, I think the concept started, and Calvin, you can kind of go into this a little bit more, because we really learned this from competitors, right? And competitors get to a point that their calories are so low, and that's where we hear a lot of these stories and these nightmare stories about people gaining a bunch of weight after doing a show. And, understanding that the body with every diet needs recovery. So I wanted you to first touch upon how we kind of started, why you would do it with a competitor, and then also explaining some other applications as to what are some other people that might benefit from a reverse diet.
Yeah, this is a fun topic because the first thing that pops up in my mind is when we first introduced this to our clients and just the looks on their faces when we told them that we were going to be increasing their calories to actually help them lose weight. So, yeah, so this goes back like bodybuilding, is really the people that actually started this, so that's one of the reasons why, I got into it as a coach, because I wanted to step outside of what was the norm and find out what are people really doing to get these athletes so lean that we can take away for our lifestyle clients. So they started this, coming out, just like you said, out of the competitions to really restore their health. But when it first started, it was really just to get them back up and get their metabolic rate back up, right? And kind of start back into the building phase. But then probably about, I'd say within the last 10 years, they started doing a reverse a little bit different. Like originally it was just bring them back up to whatever their, surplus calories is. But then they learned over time to kind of slowly bring it back up. Almost as it sounds, a reverse diet is almost really just kind of bringing calories back up the same way you brought them down, right? But what they found is they were able to keep the competitors a lot leaner in doing this. They wouldn't gain so much weight. They gave their metabolism time to catch up. So the metabolism was slowly increasing as they were increasing calories coming up. But you also have more control of how your body responds during that process by giving it, carbs and fats, and you see how your body responds and can make those changes needed. So you have more control over that area. So it didn't really make it into the coaching world as far as like lifestyle, probably until I would say probably 7 years ago, somewhere in that area. It hasn't been. It's still pretty new in this space, and there's still a lot of people that don't understand the idea of a reverse diet, to today. And it's been done wrong with a lot of people as well, because it's really what's appropriate for that person, and a lot of things you have to consider as far as hormonally and what their dieting past has been. So that being said, there is a lot of different types of or ways you can do the reverse based on the person. But the one thing you always want to keep in mind is you have to kind of know the history of that person at least a little bit. Within the last year, where's their food been? Hormones, you can kind of figure it out on the way up if there's an issue or not, but that's important to know the starting point. So when we work with clients, one of the base things that we do, the first thing right out of the box is we want to find out where they are at this moment metabolically, right? So that determines where a starting point is. So if you have someone that's in a calorie surplus and they've just been eating crazy, eating a lot of carbs, blowing it out, well, that's real simple. You put them into a cut, you know. So that where the reverse diet actually comes in is when you find a person that's been under-eaten for a long time, which is more often the case these days. You know, I think that's one of the big things that's misunderstood is a lot of people look at our country and they say, well, we're just a bunch of overeaters. We're just you know, self-indulgent, just pigging out, just overeating all the time. And it's really not that way. What it is we're malnutrition from undereating, but also picking a lot of processed foods, right? That put our body in this state where it's just malnutrition. So even though the calories were there, the nutrition wasn't there, so that metabolism still suffered from that. So the reverse is actually, in a way, it's a rehabilitation of the body. That's first and you know foremost how you want to kind of look at it. You're rehabilitating the body so that you can. That the main goal is to get your body to where it can burn fat again efficiently. So that's something you want to consider when you go into reverse, no matter what. So basically, that's what you have to kind of establish in the beginning. So for us, we find the starting point of where they were calorically, right? So this is an example. Say you have a person that has 50 pounds to lose, and they come to you and they've been eating 1,000 calories, right? So we know that they've been in this deficit, a very unhealthy deficit, right? So we would start the reverse with them. We would just go a little bit over wherever they were, typically bring them back to their basal metabolic rate, which is what your body requires just to exist and grow hair and nails, minus the activity. That's the first goal, is to get them to that. Then we kind of let their weight level out. Usually that first increase, you will see a drop in most cases, right? So that gives you the indication that they're going to respond well from the reverse diet. So next to that, the first goal is really just to get their protein to the goal that you want to have met, and their fats. So those are the two. Protein and fats are essential. You need them to live. So the first thing you want to do is get those to a good place where it's healthy. And protein's the most metabolic macronutrient that there is. It burns the most calories. So you're typically going to lose weight, and most women are under eating protein when you come in. So that's the first natural step that you make, is get the protein right, get the fats right. Now, once you have that established, that's when you start bringing in the carbohydrates. Now, this is opposite of what a lot of people think. If most people hear carbs, they think weight gain. Like carbs are the devil, right? And they just want to avoid, if you want to lose weight, you pull carbs. That's just people's way of thinking in a lot of cases. But in this case, carbs are actually what helps to rebuild the metabolism, as it stimulates the thyroid. You know, so you want to have that. That's what starts to rebuild it and get that metabolism pumping again. So say this female has to lose 50 pounds. And we want her to continue losing weight or start losing weight again as we increase. Typically, we take something like this a little bit slower, where we have a little bit more control, and we do small increments of increases every couple weeks. So in this case, probably for her, being that her calories are very low, we would start in a very safe range at about 15 grams of carbs every 2 weeks. And then we kind of stay at that pattern. Then we start to see the rate of loss. How much is she dropping? Is she staying the same weight? Or is she dropping? Or is she gaining weight? So these are the things we have to see as we start to bring things up. And normally we see the weight loss start to come, and we kind of stay in that pattern. So if you're seeing big drops, a lot of times you can actually speed that process up. But just keeping it nice and simple and just adding 15 to 20 grams of carbs about every 2 weeks is a pretty safe measure. And ideally, what you want to do is keep that going until you get them to their TDEE calories. That's considered the maintenance calories. That's the calories that you would have. That means you will not gain weight if you stay at those calories, and you will not lose weight. So that's your maintenance, what your body requires with your activity plus your basal metabolic rate. So that's the big goal, is to get them to that point and hopefully lose the weight. But remember, that's not the primary reason of this. The primary reason is to rehabilitate their body so that they can get to their maintenance calories where their bodies are happiest and can restore optimally. So losing weight in that process is a big bonus, but it does not always happen. That's one thing you have to understand when you're going into it. It does not always happen that you're going to lose weight, but The other thing you have to consider too, even though the scale doesn't show a difference, even if the scale is the same, it's showing the same weight the entire way. The one thing you got to keep in mind as you bring carbs in, carbs bring glycogen in. Glycogen fills your muscle stores back up. All the stores in your body that need that glycogen, it fills them up, and it's the equivalent to water, basically. So as we know, the water weighs more than fat. So when it's filling those stores up and you're not seeing weight gain, that means you're actually burning fat because your weight's maintaining the same. But as the metabolism speeds up, it starts to burn fat. As you're putting these carbs in, it's gradually coming. So, but in a lot of cases, you'll see weight loss. So if you see 20 pounds weight loss, and say within like a 2-month reverse, you probably lost closer to 25, even to 30 pounds, when you consider how much of the water weight came back in. So that's a basic structure of a reverse. So, that's like we're saying, there's different styles of how you want to do it. Like, say somebody's been through a weight loss phase, right? And their goal is to lose 30 pounds. And so they're at the finish of their cut, they've lost 30 pounds, they hit their goal, but you do not want to leave their calories at the end of that cut where it's baseline, bottomed out. Now is when you would bring the reverse in, and the goal with this reverse is to keep their weight the same and bring them back up to their maintenance calories so they can maintain that weight. So this is very important to understand this. This is one of the reasons why the reverse is so important, because if those calories stay down, when they're at those low calories, their body will adapt to that, and then they'll start going to metabolic stress, and they will start to lose muscle and gain belly fat, and the issues start. So we want them to be happy. We want them to live like normal people and be able to go out with their friends and do stuff in the weekends and actually eat some things, but still look good the way they want to. So if you really want to keep the progress that you have, you reverse back up, bring your calories back up to your maintenance calories, and then you keep it there. And
Yeah. And so people understand, so sorry to interrupt you, but just to kind of bring a point, because both Megan and Amanda have done this process for two different reasons. So I do want to kind of get their perspectives also, but just to kind of like wrap it up together, like in a little bow, is we used it with competitors. That was the reason that we kind of realized it, knew it, and we took it over to use with general population, because some people will go into a cut, and the thing is, if you don't lose enough, as you are, say you are overeating and you drop down and you drop your calories and get to a point that you are under your basal metabolic rate, like you said, it's going to cause some issues with the body. So you can't go lower or you're going to wind up with a whole mess of issues. So the only things that you can do is slowly bring calories up in order to go through another round, because fat loss, if you have a lot of weight to lose, it is really just going through, okay, let me go through a fat loss phase, let me rebuild and recover my body, let me hang at maintenance so my body trusts me again and is ready for another fat loss phase, then I can go through it again. And you just keep going through those cycles. And like Calvin was saying, you may not lose weight on the scale when you're going back up, but if you are eating 1,200 calories at the bottom of your cut, and your calories are brought up to say 1,900 or 2,000, and you're the same body weight, if you're eating twice as many, 800 calories more a day, that has to mean that your metabolism has sped up to compensate for the increase in food. So you are losing body fat because your metabolism is turned on to do that. So I'm going to have Amanda start, because in both perspectives, that Amanda came to us after losing 100 pounds, eating very low calories. Her body figured out how to survive there, but she had to do 2 hours of cardio and staying at very low calories. And eventually she started losing hair, having issues with her energy. She felt like garbage. Her hormones were a mess. And this is where she came to us. And now she is eating a wonderful amount of calories, feeling better. So I
Yeah,
know it
I
was,
sprung it on her that we're going to be feeding you more calories and doing zero cardio,
she
and the
loved
look
it.
on her face was exactly what I would expect to see.
Nope.
So
So, Amanda, I wanted you to kind of go on about it a little bit, about your experience, what you were thinking, and then what you understand now after going through the process.
Sure. So yeah, I went into the reverse when I first started with Calvin and Brooke, which was 3 years post losing 100 pounds. Now, I lost the 100 pounds on my own to the best of my knowledge, which was the best I could do at the time, but I did it wrong. I continually decreased calories until I got to the weight that I was looking for. But what happened was when I got to 100 pounds lost, I was only eating about 1,000 calories, which over the next 3 years turned into about 700, 800 calories a day. I am 160 pounds, 5'8". That is a ridiculous amount of food for someone my size. But I was convinced, because diet culture tells us that if I eat less food, I'm going to drop weight. Also, if I kill myself doing endless amounts of cardio with no food in my system, I will drop more weight. But what I found was it was so unsustainable because my body started shutting down. It was like, we're not going to do this if you're not going to feed us, right? So I met Calvin and Brooke, and the first thing Calvin told me, I'm eating 700, 800 calories a day, doing 4 hours of cardio 7 days a week. And Calvin said, yeah, we're going to need to bring up your calories to about 2,100 calories. And I was ready to put the phone down. Like, there was no way I was going to be able to eat that much food, because my initial reaction was fear. It was, I'm going to gain back all this weight that I worked so hard to lose. But what I didn't understand at the time is it's not just calories in, calories out that dictates how much weight we lose and what that body composition looks like. And over the first year with Calvin and Brooke, I stayed in the reverse. I think it was like 14 months, something like that, a little over a year. I went from 700, 800 calories a day, 4 hours of cardio, to zero cardio, lifting 4 to 5 times a week. It wound up being more like 5 because I fell in love with it. And eating about 2,100 calories. So his goal, the original goal that scared the crap out of me, we wound up there. And what happened with my weight is nothing. I stayed 155 pounds, but my body composition was completely different. I mean, without seeing the picture, it's hard for me to express, but like when I started, I was just like skinny fat, right? So I was like a 250-pound person lost 100 pounds, what you would expect that would look like. And a year later, with all of these additional calories and much less exercise, my body looked better than it had ever looked. I grew a butt, which I didn't have one to begin with. So thank you for that, Calvin. But in going through that process myself, I'm now starting my third reverse. And it's a sequential process. So people think that you're in a cut and you get to the bottom and then you go right back up to where you want to, right? No time in between, no gradual stepping up. And what happens is you gain all the weight back. And I think when you think about a reverse, now from a mindset coach perspective, it was something that I started thinking about when I was in it as a therapist. But now as a mindset coach and working with people who are in the reverse constantly, there are a lot of things about this that won't sit well with you at first. And that's the hardest part, right? Because you're asking somebody to give you all their trust, but you're telling them that they can eat more food and lose more weight. It's counterintuitive to what we know, right? So what we've been taught our whole lives, which is basically nothing, right? I mean, most of us had maybe a food pyramid at some point in school, but that was about all we knew, right? Most of my learning came from like Cosmo magazines when I was a teenager, right? How to lose 10 pounds in 4 days or whatever it is. But if you think about it, just the words reverse diet, there is a subliminal implication there, right? So a diet is about losing weight. It's about restriction. It's about limitations. So this is a reverse diet. So it's the opposite of that. So I'm going to gain weight. So if you think about the initial emotion you get, it's actually because the words don't make sense in your head. But if you can get past that and with a little trust, and I think it also helps that Calvin sent me photos of a girl about my age who went through the reverse at the same time, but she was farther along. And it was really helpful to see that, because the reverse can be super emotionally challenging, right? We have established beliefs around restricting behaviors in our dieting, that to be healthy, we must eat less food. And the food that we eat is not going to taste as good as the food that we're used to. So it's already a negative experience, right? Dieting has to be a negative experience. But in order to lose weight and become healthy, eating less is actually the opposite of what you need to do in a lot of cases, because the body during cut times is very stressed.
Yep.
And then it needs that recovery. But this mirrors how we function in our society. Let's grind through it. Let's push through it. Let's keep going. We got this. Let's go. That's nice, but your body's going to win every time. So
Yep.
if there's something I've learned in the last year, it's I can't fight my own hormones. Gonna stop trying doing that, because it's not gonna work, right?
Yeah.
What I can do is I can implement things that will benefit me in that process. So a caloric deficit is not the only factor when it comes to losing weight. We have a number of different factors. We're also looking at weight loss versus body recomposition. My weight stayed the same. The number on the scale stayed the same, but I went from a size 6 to a size 2. So in the process of that, what happened? Well, because I had more carbs, I was able to build more muscle, and the muscle was able to burn more fat at rest because I had more lean muscle. So my body got that toned look that everybody's looking for, because I was also lifting weights at the time. So it's a combination of all of those things, but it is counterintuitive to just accept that I'm going to eat more calories and lose weight. The other piece of that is the hallmark of the reverse is what I just mentioned. You may not lose weight in the reverse. And for a lot of us, the scale tells us the only thing we need to know. That number is the only criteria that matters, right? When in fact, that number is really like a combination of a bunch of different variables. It's not just a body fat measurement. You're measuring how much water is in your system. You're measuring how much poop is in your system. You're measuring how tired you are from your workout yesterday. There's a lot of factors that go into that number. So taking away some of the legitimacy of that number and saying, I'm going to rehabilitate my metabolism.
Correct.
The goal is not to lose weight. It's to fix the broken machine, right? So I hear people say a lot like, well, if I'm not going to lose weight, what's the point? It's kind of like if your goal is to play piano on stage in front of an audience, there are a number of things that you have to do before you're able to do that. You have to learn to read music. You have to practice your instrument. You have to prepare specific pieces and commit them to memory. You can't jump the gun. So a lot of people come in and they want to start in a cut, but their body, like mine was, is so broken down from the things that we have done to it, not necessarily intentionally. And we need to repair it before it can go back. Because after that year reverse, we went into a cut and I lost about 6 pounds and got down to my lowest weight ever. And I looked awesome and I had abs. And after that, we reversed back up, and guess what? Put on a lot more muscle. So guess what? I can eat more now. That 2,100 calories in the first reverse turned into 2,500 calories in the second round, which meant that when I cut, I didn't have to eat 1,000 calories to survive. The lowest I went in my cut was 1,600 calories. That's double what I was eating when I was starting.
Yep.
It's because we're repairing the system instead of just attacking the issue, right? We want to put a Band-Aid on it. We just want to look better. We just want the number to be better on the scale. Well, we have to fix the system so that can happen, right? And stay that way. Be sustainable.
Yep.
And I think there's also, a little bit of a lack of instant gratification in the reverse. When you're in a cut, you're constantly seeing the scale drop. You're seeing that number come down. You're being positively rewarded for that. But what goes on in a reverse is completely underneath. You can't see your metabolism healing, but you can identify things that indicate that it's healing, like my hair stopped falling out. I got my cycle back. So things, your body will let you know. A lot of people think I should be hungry all the time if I'm trying to lose weight. Hunger is an indicator that you're burning fat. It's good that you're hungry. It means your metabolism's working. So these perceptions that we have around these ideas are not necessarily true. And I think the hardest part is what I had to do with Calvin, which was trust him that I'm going to eat more food and I'm not going to put on a whole bunch of weight. And there is some radical acceptance in that. So you kind of have to go in blind. It's one of those circumstances, right? But why are you doing it? Is it to lose weight or is it to make sure your body is functioning properly? So those two things can be combined and they can be mutually exclusive from each other. So I think, and the last piece with the reverse is you're consuming more calories, right? And it's more carbs. Everybody thinks carbs are terrible because everybody thinks about Atkins and keto and all the other things. I didn't eat carbs for 3 years. None, except for vegetables. No wonder I felt like garbage all the time, but now I know that. But if you look at food choice, you need to start looking at your food in terms of quantity versus quality, because we're adding more carbs, but we're not giving you more fat to go with it. So those carbs have to be clean carbs, which are going to positively affect your body in a different way. So if you were eating, if pizza was your carb source, pizza is not a carb source, before, and now it's like oatmeal and rice, you can eat a lot more oatmeal and rice volume wise. So you will be eating more food, but the quality of the food changes. And I think that, in terms of having that inverse relationship of poor quality food to smaller quantity food and vice versa, it's all about macros existing as a budget and using, you have $1. You got 4 quarters, 10 dimes, 20 nickels, or 100 pennies. It's up to you. It's still $1. So I think the last piece of the reverse that's really challenging is it asks us to think differently about our food choices. And that's where people get the most stuck. Because you're thinking, I'm going to eat more pizza. You're not going to eat more pizza. But you are going to have more food and you're going to feel more satiated. So just all those misconceptions, I think, really, once they're defined and once you start, you realize very quickly, I feel a lot better than I had been feeling. So it's really one of those things where you have to overcome that fear a little bit and put some trust in the process in people that know what they're doing and they've done it before. I like to give my clients my own progress photos. I don't have anything to share. You can see, look at what it did for me. And that's the community that we've built as well. So we have that as a reference for people. They can actually see that they can do this and look better. But ultimately feeling better is really the hallmark of the reverse, is your energy increases. More food feels better as long as it's the right stuff.
Yeah. And you want to think about your body. The reason it's your maintenance is because that's where your body should be living and feeling fueled and feeling that it is getting all the nutrients it needs in order to perform optimally. It's when you take that away that your body instantly will think there is a famine. Oh my gosh, I need to survive. Your body doesn't realize you're dieting. Your body is just looking at, this is how much I need. Now I have less. Let me just go ahead and get myself ready. And like Megan, you had a reverse also, but it was a very different process. And I also want you to go into maybe some tips and things that you have for people, because you do work, very long shifts as a nurse. And it can be challenging, right? It can be something that people might have a hard time with. So maybe sharing a little bit about your experience and what you went through and what the challenges were and some things that helped.
Absolutely. There's pieces that's very similar to Amanda's story, and then there's some differences. So I came to Calvin and Brooke actually wanting to step on stage. I have a history of being an athlete, working out. So I did have muscle, but I had 3 kids in about over the span of 6 years, and then a couple of years of just it's all about family. It's all about the kids and just not, giving back to myself. So this was kind of my way of getting back to me, So I didn't have, say, a ton of weight to say lose at the beginning. But I will say I did also start with a reverse because we had to get my calories up higher before we could go into, a cut to prep for stage. I may have lost, I think, maybe somewhere around in probably like maybe 5-ish pounds, somewhere around in there. But my body composition through that period, night and day, totally looked different. And that's what you want to think about, when you talk about this reverse is, you're adding more of that resistance training and the right type of resistance training. Because, sometimes we just don't know what we're doing in the gym. We're in the gym, we're doing things, but it might not be maybe the absolute correct thing for our body type because everyone's different. But yeah, major change in the body composition. And then when my body was at a good point metabolically that we could go into a cut, we did. I responded well. And then, we stepped on stage and then we came into a reverse. All right. So we reversed out of it, exactly what we've been talking about coming from a competitor standpoint. And I will say, we worked my calories up, and that does come with some weight gain, right? Because stepping on stage you're at a low body weight and a low, probably the lowest maybe fat percentage in your body you've had, but it's not healthy.
Nope.
So you have to restore that health back to, your homeostasis, and so that you are getting back all of these things that we've been talking about and feeling energized, not feeling the fatigue, the brain fog, and different symptoms. So reversed out of that, had some weight gain, but healthy weight gain. I did not, gain a lot of extra weight. And I think that is coming from, again, what we've been talking about, choosing the right types of foods. I didn't necessarily change a lot of the foods I was eating because, you find what foods work best for your system. Because what works well for me and what I digest best might not be the best thing for Amanda. And vice versa. But you find through trial and error, and it takes some time sometimes to figure out what works best for you, during this period. You just really increase portion sizes. So, and I think this is where sometimes the word diet gets kind of a bad rap, because when we think of diet, we think of losing weight, right? We think of I'm eating less, I'm in a caloric deficit. But really, diet is just food. So it's just whether you're eating more food or less food. But being able to recognize the right types of food to fuel my body, I was able to put even more muscle on during that reverse, not gain extra weight, and comes back to the right food choices too. Just because you have more calories to consume does not mean you're going out and eating fast food and a bunch of processed food and things that aren't going to make you feel good, because I can eat 2,000 calories and eat crap and feel terrible or I can eat 2,000 calories of food that is going to make me feel good and feel phenomenal, and not have that extra, weight gain or changes really to the body composition, because 2,000 calories one way and 2,000 calories another way could totally change what my body looks like. Even though it's the same caloric intake, major difference on how your body is going to respond to that. So yeah, we got up to my maintenance, probably actually a slight surplus. And then we actually wanted to step on stage again. So again, another cycle. We went into a caloric deficit. We, did the prep, stepped on stage and reversed out again. And feeling good, through this last reverse that I, kind of wrapped up here, had some personal things happen. And that will happen because it's life. Things are going to happen. And it's how you're dealing with those things and not allowing, maybe some personal issues or things that are happening in your life to overtake or overcome still the goals you're working towards. There will be leniency, in the times, but just not allowing it to totally derail your ultimate goals. And now we're in a prep again. So we're going through the cycle again, and we're going to reverse again after. So, it, like you said, it's that in and out. You're not going to always stay at that higher caloric intake. A lot of people, more lifestyle people, they're probably going to do maybe a cut or a caloric deficit maybe once a year, and you want to get in and get out because you want your body to feel energized, have the homeostasis that it needs. And kind of when you're in that caloric deficit, your head down, you're doing the things you need to do, so you can see the benefits of what you're trying to do, but you don't want to stay in it for an extended amount of time, especially as a general population, because again, being at a very low caloric intake is not healthy. It's not healthy for our bodies. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
I
my
love that.
story.
And
She,
something, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say she touched on so many great things. I mean, both of you did so many great things. Almost we would almost need a part two to this podcast to be able to get all this in. But understanding what Megan was saying about when her body fat was that low, that's not healthy. When you see people have veins in their abs, in a lot of cases that means their body fat's in a place where your body doesn't function that well and it doesn't really feel good. So this is a good example of why when you reverse a competitor out, it's different than when you reverse somebody in lifestyle. Even when I first started reversing competitors out, I was doing it slower because I didn't want them to put on too much weight. But I've learned that one, you want to get, if they lost their cycle, which can happen in prep from stress, right? The first thing you want to do in this reverse is see that their cycle comes back. So you have goals that you need to hit as you're reversing. So you're bringing fats up a little bit more than maybe I would with lifestyle to get the body healing in the proper way. But also it's grueling. So when you've been in that, with competitors, they have a tendency to go very low in calories and can be high cardio, and their leptin and ghrelin hormone is thrown off. So we need that regulated, and how that happens is when you return fat into the cells. So you actually do want to put a little bit of fat onto these competitors as you pull them out of the reverse to get their hormones back in repair mode and get them feeling better. So now I typically give them a pretty good bump right out of the gate, and their reverse is pretty quick. But we still do it in a way that they can kind of maintain and stay close, what I would call striking distance, of stage. So it is something that you have to watch closely. I would recommend that if you are a competitor or thinking of doing it, I highly recommend getting a coach, at least for your first show, and have it done right, because you can mess yourself up metabolically by doing these things wrong. And in her case too, when we get her to the top, I'm not just shooting to get her maintenance calories. We have improvements to make before the next show. As a competitor, that's what it's about. It's about improving from show to show. And in doing this, you need to go into a little bit of a surplus to be able to build. So she wanted to add some muscle, so we have to push her a little bit over. I like to look at it as about 10% above their maintenance, is where I find the sweet spot is, where we can get calories up and have them, build enough without putting on too much body fat. So that's different for every person. You have to kind of find and watch weight as you do it. But you have to have them there for a certain amount of time before you go back into a cut. The thing that I've seen happen over and over with some competitors in the past, from different coaches, is they go back into these preps too soon. Their body hasn't rehabilitated, so they might get away with it the first or second time, but then they go into that third prep and they find that their body's not responding. It's just not responding the way it was. So they're trying all these different things and turning up the cardio, doing all this, and they end up with a really stressed look in the end, and most likely their competitor is holding a lot of water. That's because they didn't have enough time to let their body recover and rehabilitate. So they just rushed them in. So it is, as a natural competitor, this is where this matters the most, which Megan is, and so it's very, very important to go through this process with the competitor. But not only that, you have to make sure that they have enough time out of the deficit to repair properly. These are key things to keep in mind. And
Yeah. So I'm going to wrap this up because we are running out of time here. So just to kind of wrap up here, which we can do a part two on this if you guys had want, but the thing to remember is that there are phases. there is a fat loss phase, there is a recovery phase, is what we know, right? And you stay at your maintenance calories to repair. It's almost like if you keep pushing and grinding and you are working 12-hour shifts week after week without having a break, eventually you're going to break down, right? So it's giving your body the equal amount of recovery for every push. That is something super important, and specifically more in women than with men because of our hormones. And making sure that we understand that in a cut, you have to stay in a deficit in order to lose weight. When you are in a reverse and you are recovering the body, even if you have a little bit, like Megan was saying, like something comes up, there's a little bit more wiggle room with a reverse. You have to stay kind of tight, but things can go a little bit off where you can still stay within a certain range until we get close to your maintenance, right? When we get close to your maintenance, it is very easy to go into a surplus. But when you're very low calorie, if you go a little bit over here and there because of things going on, but always keeping in mind that when you have a goal in your head and that is the one thing you can control, sometimes having that plan and having that stability of knowing, well, I can't control all the things going on, but I can control what I'm doing with my body composition and fueling my body and getting it to a place that I am so healthy that it can withstand all of the nonsense that is going on. So I think that that is a big, also a big idea of understanding that recovering the body is going to put you in a place. It's just like if you keep dieting and doing the things and taking your body, it's like that boyfriend that keeps messing up and apologizing and messing up and apologizing. You're going to keep doing it. Eventually your body's like, no, 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 no. I remember all of this. We're done. I'm not dropping weight anymore. We're finished because you keep taking food away from me. So part of it also is healing and allowing your body to know there is no longer a famine because again, it doesn't know you're dieting. So,
I think we should give them a couple tips too, as far as what
yes.
to pay attention to when you're coming out of the reverse. If you are going into the reverse and you're doing all the things right and you're noticing that you are gaining weight, there's some things you want to check. First is going to be the obvious. Are you being adherent? Are you logging things properly? Are you getting things right? Because not munching, if you munch in between meals, little things here and there, that can throw you out. And it can throw the whole balance off, and you can end up gaining weight in the reverse. So the thing you want to keep in mind with the reverse is you want to be regimented, probably more so than even when you're in the cut, because you don't have as much room for error as you do. When you're in a cut, you gain a little bit, you're going to cut calories anyway more, you can get that fat off. When you reverse, and once you start gaining weight, it's very hard to get that weight off when that rhythm comes off. So you want to stay regimented with it and try to stay on point with it. The other thing is stress. This is what's going to affect you in a cut. It's what's going to affect you in a reverse. So if you're sleeping, 4 to 5 hours a night, you're going to be at risk of gaining weight in a reverse. You're going to be at risk of not losing body fat in a cut. These things have a big role in this. Any stress in general, your body doesn't know if it's physical or if it's mental. You want to try to manage stress as much as possible when it comes to body composition, and this matters a lot when you're reversing, because if your cortisol levels are coming up as you're increasing carbs, which the carbs should bring cortisol down, but if the stress is so much,
Like
then
little
you
children
have,
walking into the room. That's one of those stressors.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to
right.
get
So
some
this is right. It can happen, and I see it more in females. I do. I think guys just have a tendency to handle stress better, but it's something to be mindful of when you're checking things. To see what's off. Look at your surroundings. Look at your lifestyle, and think, am I in a stress state right now? And then you want to work on things with managing that, which would be another podcast.
Right.
So, and then you want to take it. You want to wrap it up, right, bro?
We're going to have to wrap it up because they both have to go. But
So maybe we'll do a part two.
we will do a part 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and more next time. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Master Your Metabolism. If you found value in today's episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd hit subscribe and share this episode with someone who could use a little guidance in their health journey. Ready to take the next step? Head over to www.mastersfitnesscoaching.com and you can book a free call right from the site so we can chat about your goals and how we can help support you. Don't forget to join our Facebook group where we're sharing coaching tips, support, and tricks to help keep you on track and continue making progress. You don't have to do this alone. We're here to walk with you every step of the way. Until next time, stay consistent, stay kind to yourself, and keep mastering your metabolism. Let's do this together.